Benz in Panama. I'ma still I buy leads with the data. She bought a 17 just to fly back. Just to fly back. I'ma catch for me, I'ma fire that. Girl, I am too smooth, must a Cadillac. Must a Cadillac, must a Cadillac. Purple jeans on, girl, yeah, the Benz on leaving job. When I front the police, I wanna know what we want. When I pan a line, what we drive. Lucky for the years, me I live.
Welcome to Blue Blood TV Season 6, Episode 17. And we're going to call this podcast the Blue Blood Brawl. Tar Heels triumph over the Blue Devils. This week, me, Will Phelan, Darryl Brunson will dissect this epic clash between Duke and North Carolina. The Tar Heels clawed their way to an 84-79 victory, securing the ACC regular season championship. And we're going to talk about if Hubert outfoxed Coach K's successor, Jon Scheyer. What does this win mean for UNC's NCAA chances? And will break down the key plays, clutch performances, while Darryl delivers his fiery takes on the officiating and the future of Duke basketball. Take advantage and listen to the Blue Blood Brawl breakdown, which happens now. What's up, guys? What's up, Will? What's up, Darryl? How you guys feeling?
What's going on, Hassan? Feeling great, man.
How about you, Darryl?
I'm feeling smothered. I'm feeling smothered in this jacket I got on here.
You look fantastic, man. You look fantastic.
Yeah. The hat's probably the best looking thing on me right now.
Yeah, you can get rid of that. There's a big stain in the middle of it.
So Darryl, our fans that are actually just on the audio portion, tell them what you're wearing.
So I do have a vintage University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill jacket on. Big Jordan fan growing up, so I found this deep in my closet. Probably should go in the trash when we finish the show.
Okay, but you do have your Duke hat on.
Absolutely, yes, sir. I absolutely will always rep the big Duke hat for sure.
Okay, Will, big game. How are you feeling? Talk to us.
Feel fantastic, man. It was a hell of a weekend to be a Carolina fan. That's for sure.
Okay, all right. Did you expect this, Will? Did you expect the outcome 84-79?
I don't know if you guys remember last week when I said Carolina would win by 5, but I absolutely expected Carolina to win by 5. Got a little lucky at the end there, but yeah, it feels. I mean, I fully expected us to go out and show those Blue Devils what's up.
Okay, so Will, we're gonna go to game analysis. What were the most significant factors that led to UNC's victory? Tell us, Will.
It's Cormac Ryan. There's no other answer. There's anybody that says anything else is lying to you. If I had told you, I mean, you and I watched the game together, Hassan, and if I had told you, we talked about it on Saturday night. If somebody had told us that Carolina would go into Cameron and RJ and Baycott would only have 18 combined points, we would have thought that we would have gotten steamrolled, right?
Correct.
I mean, it's that game that Cormac played out of his freaking mind. Jalen Withers had 6 and 8 off the bench. We got contributions from guys that we really haven't got many contributions from this season, and have been a little inconsistent. Yeah, Cormac Ryan was the key, man. He was the best player on the court.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think he was the key because they left him open? Or do you think he was the key because they were so focused on stopping Ingram, Baycott, and RJ that they looked at the stats and said, "We'll give Cormac Ryan those shots"?
Well, I think at the beginning of that game they were so focused on stopping RJ because they were throwing everything at RJ, and it left. I mean, that system, the way that system works is if they double RJ, if they double Baycott, somebody's always going to be open. So. Last time they tried to double Baycott anyway, and Ingram had a hell of a game as well. And then this time they tried to double RJ, and Cormac hit 2 big threes to start the game. And in a rivalry game like that on the road, you've got to get out to a fast start and quiet the crowd. And Cormac's 2 big threes early helped us do that.
So do you think Jon Scheyer was wrong based on the scouting reports, based on previous games? to say, okay, let's stop Armando, RJ, and Harrison Ingram, and let's give Cormac some looks and let Cormac beat us. Do you think that was the game plan?
I don't know what their game plan was, honestly. It looked like they were trying to shut down. Most of their attention was on Ingram, Baycott, and RJ. And rightfully so. I mean, those guys, if RJ's the ACC player of the year, I mean, he's the best player in the conference, and it wasn't even close this season. But it's one of those to where, like, if we're deep enough and we've got the weapons enough that, I mean, we've been talking about it all season. If Cormac could figure out his shot, this team can play with and probably beat just about anybody in the country, and we proved that on Saturday.
Okay, Darryl, we're going to go over to you. Did Duke struggle more than anticipated, or was Carolina the better team, or did Cormac Ryan finally arrive on campus for the Duke game? What are your thoughts?
I think you asked Will about the scouting report. I think John Shire's scouting report actually was really good. Even after going 6 for 8 from the three, Cormac Ryan is shooting 34% from the 3-point arc, right? So you take your chances with that guy. He hasn't been shooting the ball that great. Now he was considered a great shooter coming in, but he hasn't been shooting the ball that well this season. RJ's been, obviously ACC Player of the Year. Armando and Harrison Ingram both killed us the first game. You got to let somebody else beat you. And you focus on those three guys, you let somebody else beat you, and Cormac Ryan just happened to show up. I think what happened was Duke got out to a sluggish start. He hits 2 early threes, gets those good looks, and now he's feeling hot. And the 2 threes towards the end of the game, especially the one with about 2 minutes left that put him up 9. That was a dagger, man. I mean, you're talking about like a Klay Thompson type of shot. Dude just came off of the screen, got the ball curled, threw it up, and it's nothing but net. I don't think he hit any rim. So I don't think that it was anything that Duke necessarily did. Cormac Ryan had a great game. You got to give the guy some credit. I believe Duke had a couple players who could have played better. I talked about Jeremy Roach last week, right? I was hyping Jeremy Roach up. He went 3 for 12 from the field, I believe, and he was pretty much quiet the whole game. And you as a younger team, you can't have that happen from your senior point guard. And when somebody from the other team steps up who's unexpected, you got to have some kind of character step up as well. Filipowski had 23 points, but that's what you expect from him. You needed Tommy. What I was telling about TJ Power. Shire's got to play this guy, man. He played him 4 minutes. The dude took 2 shots and hit both of them. And I think that at this point, Shire just needs to start looking at himself, maybe, because it's a little late in the season to start throwing guys in there, but he's got to play TJ Power more.
Okay, so Darryl, Cormac Ryan is hot. He comes out, he hits 2 big threes. At what point does John Shire adjust? Or did he adjust?
Well,
did he adjust to like the hot guy? I mean, Carolina has shown that when someone's hot, they let him go, right? So like Armando's had his games, RJ's had many games, Ingram's had his games, and now we've got Cormac Ryan having a game, 30 points in a college basketball game. Why didn't Shire adjust and say, okay, this is the hot hand, let's go get on him and single mark RJ?
I believe he did adjust, actually. I mean, Cormac hits 2 early threes, he hits 2 late threes, and he shot free throws late as well. But those 31 points, a lot of that came at the very beginning of the game and the very end of the game. And so I think he did make adjustments. Sometimes when a guy is hot, man, you just can't, there's nothing you really can adjust to account for that. And like I said, that last 3 that he hit he was unconscious. You could just tell it was almost like a heat check 3. And he was on fire. It's like NBA Jam, man. He started burning the net.
He's heating up.
Absolutely.
Okay, Will. So let's talk about adjustments throughout the game. Who made the better adjustments, Hubert or John Shire? And who was the better coach?
I think Hubert was the better coach, and I don't think it was even close, man. We just got more out of guys that, I mean, like you said, Darryl, Cormac's a 39% 3-point shooter on the season. He's not like, it's just we get contributions from guys you're not expecting. And and we really never had to adjust. I mean, we were able to answer every time Duke had a run, but we came out with a better game plan from the jump. As far as adjustments go, I mean, getting Filipowski going at halftime, I don't know what he said to him, but I think Roach and Filipowski only had like 6 or 8 combined total points in the first half, and Filipowski had a hell of a second half. But I'm looking at the box score right now, and Duke's got to get more than 7 points out of their bench. Ryan Young plays 19, 20 minutes in the game and has 0 points and 6 boards. It's not going to do it at any level. That might not get it done tomorrow against State or whoever you guys will have to play. So I think that Shire made the better adjustments, but you don't really have to make adjustments if your game plan works to perfection when you come out the gate.
All right, guys. So we're going to go on to key players and performances. Darryl, I'm going to start with you. Did any Blue Devil rise to the challenge? Were there any players you were happy with, or did the pressure get to them, or what players on the Duke team did you feel were ineffective? But start with the players that you thought were great or did rise to the challenge.
So I mentioned TJ Power. Dude played 4 minutes, had 7 points. You can only do so much of your coaches and putting you in the game, but I feel like late in the game he hit a three that was a big three. It still gave them an opportunity to stay in the game, but for the most part, everybody either was lackluster or did right about what they should have done. Jared McCain had a decent game. For one of your first year players, you probably live with him scoring 19 points, shooting 50% from the field. But he didn't pull a Cormac Ryan. He didn't show up and play exceptionally well. And I don't think anybody on the Duke team did. And as to your point of who didn't show up, I am going to pound both Jeremy Roach and Mark Mitchell, especially Mr. Mitchell, who had 3 points, 4 rebounds. Now we've been talking about this. Yes, sir.
Why? Why do you think you think he just said, I don't want to play today? Like, why did he get 3 points?
Sometimes I believe when you look at certain players across the court, there's an intimidation factor. And I believe Mark Mitchell looks at Armando Bacot and especially Harrison Ingram, a super athletic individual, and realized that he was in for a long night. And that is unfortunate for the Blue Devils because, as we talked about all season, size is where they lack. And in this game, Mark Mitchell lacks size and heart.
I mean, are the Tar Heels that big? I don't think they're that big. I think they're equally sized to the Duke team.
Absolutely. But sometimes when you look at a dude that's 37, I think is what Armando Bacot is.
I think he's 24.
He's 24 going on 37. I do apologize. But no, a 6-year player or whatever the case is, man, you're looking at this guy and it could just be intimidating. It's not even necessarily about height, but we're talking about weight. We're talking athleticism. Harrison Ingram is a monster. You look at that dude in his jersey, he looks like he's about to bust out of it. And I think Mark Mitchell looked at a guy who kind of looks similar to him in build with more athleticism, and it can be scary, man, watching him jump out the gym.
All right, Will, to you, biggest standouts for UNC, and what did each player contribute to the win?
I mean, outside of Cormax, we could sit here and run that one into the ground, but it was just an all-around team effort. If you look at the game plan,
hold it, Will, do you know the game plan? You act like you are hanging out with Hubert. He's telling you.
I don't know the game plan, but if you listen, I listen to Hubert's talk show, and I do my homework, man. And if you come out, if you listen to these things and you hear them talk about what their game plan was, it was kill you with defense, and they did just that. I mean, they were forcing Filipowski into 3-point shots that he shouldn't take. He was 2 of 6 from beyond the arc. And you're forcing these guys into bad looks.
Hold on. You saying you're forcing Filipowski to take 3 points? I thought that's what Filipowski does.
They were just sort of letting him take shots that he's not supposed to take, right? So if you come out and you play out of your mind defensively, these guys, Duke's players, are gonna force up bad shots, contested shots. You don't want Filipowski to take 6 3-pointers in a game. That's not Duke's strategy. That's not how they're going to win. If Filipowski's going to do it, it's going to be down low, right? He tries to play bully ball. And if we're forcing him into 6 of his 18 shots were threes, then I'll take that all day long. And I think that this was just an all-around team effort. You and I were talking about how poorly Elliot Cadeau played with his foul trouble that he got into and the freshman mistakes that he was making again and everything. But then he hit that prayer of what I thought was a 3-point. Refs came back and the TV Valentine said it was a 2-pointer. So it's just, I mean, it's every time you think one of these guys is having a bad night, Cadeau, Jalen Washington, even he only had 2 points, but it was a timely bucket for us, and it just guys step up. It was an all around team effort.
Did you feel that the referees were calling, especially at the end, calling it charges for Duke, blocking fouls for Duke? Like if it looked like a charge on Carolina, it went against Carolina to get Duke back in that game, or did you feel like that game was reffed appropriately?
So I think you and I have talked about it before that, or we've all talked about it before that the time of the game shouldn't matter. If a foul is a foul, you should call it regardless of if you're inside of 2 minutes or if you're in the first 2 minutes of the game or whenever. And if you look at, I mean, Filipowski had 4 fouls with 6.5, 5.5 to go, whatever it was. And he probably had 18 to 20 fouls in that game and didn't foul out of the game. You look at him tripping Harrison as he ran back up the court, talking about his foot slipped. Get out of here with that, man. Like that's not he's trying to be a Christian Laettner and he's not doing it well enough.
Okay. So, Will, let me ask another question. How is this performance, and Darryl, this is for you as well. How is the performance in the Blue Blood rivalry affect the confidence of both teams moving forward? Will, you start, and then Darryl, you finish.
Duke in 2 games has led for 14 seconds. I think that it's the confidence of Duke has to be shot. They've thrown everything they've got at us twice and have led for all of 14 seconds when it was 2-0 in the first game. They can't beat us this year.
Darryl.
The good thing, Hassan, about moving forward is Duke may not have to play Carolina again. So, I think if they match up one more time in the ACC tournament, especially with the ACC being so weak this year, it's possible, sure. I think if they match up again, Will's probably right. Their confidence right now is a little low, and John Shire's going to have to find a way to motivate them and build that confidence back up. I think moving forward into the NCAA tournament, I believe Duke still has some momentum. They put together a lot of good games along that stretch between these 2 blue blood rivalry games that we've had over the last month and a half. So I think into the NCAA tournament, they're still a confident team against Carolina. Like Will said, that they might be a bit defeated right now, but it doesn't mean that they're not able to beat Carolina. I think that Duke still has a solid chance. They didn't play that great, Hassan, and they lost by 5 points. Cormac Ryan had 31 points. Duke lost by 5. If nothing else, you take away from the fact that you shut down the player of the year in your conference pretty much all game. 9 points from RJ Davis. You shut down the dude that beat you to a freaking pulp the game before in Armando Bacot with the 9 points. 8 rebounds, 8 rebounds. And I think that you can take some bits and pieces from this game and say, you know what? If we see them, when we see them in the ACC championship game, we got something for that ass.
So let me ask you something, Darryl. Like, did you set them down, or did they adjust and say Cormac is hot today? They've seen it in practice. They knew he could shoot. Hubert Davis kept going to Cormac because I believe there's something in practice that he was seeing. And that night, it all came together for him. And RJ and Armando had deferred to him. I've seen Armando defer to RJ Davis. Did you really shut them down, or did they know that you were going after them and they saw a hot hand and they rode it to a championship?
No, they saw their shots bouncing off the side of the rim. Armando's 4 for 11 from the field. RJ's 4 for 12 from the field. After you start, you're watching Cormac Ryan get hot, sure. But you're also watching your shots not go through the net. They were playing incredible defense. Jeremy Roach, I give him a hard time, but he was playing some solid defense on RJ Davis. And what I said before the game was RJ would have less points than Jeremy Roach, which held true. It's just the fact that RJ had 9 and Jeremy Roach had 13.
Okay. All right. So let's go. ACC championship implication. Darryl, does Carolina's win solidify them as ACC favorite to win the tournament for the tournament?
Yes. Duke is the only, in my opinion, Duke. And I'll give there are a couple schools who could sneak up. They're sneaky good, but I don't know that they're good enough to win it all. But Duke is really the only competition that Carolina has, in my opinion. And they have to be the favorite if they're 2-0 against the Blue Devils this year. You can talk about Virginia, you could talk about Clemson, you could talk about Wake Forest, but most of those teams, they're going to have to be hot to be able to beat these two schools. I believe we're going to see a rematch. And right now, Carolina's 2-0 against their favorite opponent, which is Duke. And if they see each other again, I imagine that Carolina will be the favorite in that matchup.
Okay, but let me ask you a question. Has there ever been a season where Duke has lost to Carolina 3 times in a row?
I would have to go through the archives, but not recently. And I will tell you this: if Duke loses again to Carolina in the ACC championship after losing the possibility of being co-champions for the regular season, John Shire might want to stand up because that seat is going to be flaming.
Okay, so because Darryl, listen, you lost at Cameron. I mean, to win at Cameron is hard enough. Duke had an ACC title on the line, champions, and I believe if they would have won that game, statistically, they would have been number 1 in the ACC tournament, and they didn't rise to the occasion on their home floor. Now the venue shifts to Washington, D.C. It's strategically in the middle of North Carolina and New York. And I would imagine you're going to have just as many Carolina fans in DC as you're going to have Duke fans or more. Don't you think the odds of Duke winning in Washington, D.C. go down because they're just not on their home court? They're not in Madison Square Garden, and they're not at Cameron Indoor.
If you're one of the bettors, absolutely. If you're setting money lines or if you're setting the odds, sure. But in my opinion, as I've discussed, they did an incredible job of doing something that I don't think any other team's done this year by shutting down both RJ Davis and Armando Bacot. You take that to DC, and we'll see if Cormac Ryan can continue that hot streak out in DC. But I don't think he goes 6 for 8 from 3 again.
But do you think that changes the scenario right now when Cormac gets a look psychologically, you got to go guard him. Now RJ's open. The kick goes to RJ. He's getting clean looks. I mean, now you're really trying to guard 4 guys and a point guard of Cadeau who's finding those guys. That's a harder feat. Will, we're going to go to you. The momentum. Does this victory give UNC the momentum heading into the NCAA tournament and the ACC tournament?
Without a doubt. Again, like you took the words right out of my mouth, Hassan. In a game like this past weekend, if you move forward, we're going to see each other again, right? I mean, we're the only 2 teams that are really worth a damn in the ACC this year. So in the back of their minds, Cormac going 6 of 8 from beyond the arc and hitting a bunch of free throws down the stretch and all that, and having his best game of his career is going to be in their minds. So that defense that Roach was playing on RJ, he's going to have to slide and help because that's still going to be in the back of his mind, and it's going to free up a guy like Ingram or RJ, or even if Trimble comes off the bench, Cadeau, whatever. I mean, whoever it is. So I do think that this performance out of Cormac specifically it just gave us all the momentum in the world going into the tournament.
Okay, so let's look ahead. Let's go forward. Let's start talking about the NCAA tournament. Let's talk about this upcoming ACC tournament, which has already started. Darryl, where does Duke go from here under this new coaching staff? What has to happen in the ACC tournament?
They got to win. The
whole thing.
They, in my opinion, if they see Carolina again in that championship game and they lose, that will probably deflate their tires, man. I don't see them rolling into the NCAA tournament after that with confidence. I do believe that they can win this ACC tournament, though. If they lose prior to Carolina, it's probably even worse. I just because we've talked about the ACC is not good this year. And this is Duke's opportunity. While they have lost both games to Carolina, this is Duke's opportunity to win this tournament, to win the ACC tournament, because they have one opponent who's really a threat. And we've talked about this, but man, somebody's got to step up for the Blue Devils. I'm not worried about Cormac Ryan scoring 31 points again. I doubt RJ Davis scores 9 again. But the same way that Carolina has these guys who step up in the moments, who, RJ drops 42 when nobody else can score, Cormac Ryan 31, Duke's just got to have somebody go out there and go nuts. And I've got the power, man. I need TJ Power in there.
Okay, Will.
I need John Shire. If you can hear me, put TJ Power in the game.
Will, adjustments. Do you think Carolina needs to make any adjustments before the ACC tournament play and going into the NCAA tournament?
I don't. I think we ride the hot hand. I mean, we've got 4 or 5 guys that can kill you on any given night or day. I guess it would be tomorrow. And I just think we stick with what got us there, man. Defense and effort. I mean, we're out hustling. If you look at that game, we were the first to every loose ball. The guys were throwing bodies around. I don't think we need to make any adjustments.
Okay, so Darryl, what adjustments do you think Duke needs to make?
Put TJ Power in the game.
Yeah. Tell them
it's got to be your effort, man. Their effort is terrible.
Hassan, we talked about this at the beginning of the year, okay? And I'm getting a little pissed off. John Shire, I do apologize for yelling at you. But we've talked about this. Duke has an immense amount of talent on the bench. If it's not clicking, man, it ain't. If they say if it ain't broke, fix it. This is broke, okay? It's been breaking all season, and they've been playing in a weak conference where they benefited from that, but they haven't gotten much better. And I still think this is a good team. I still think this team can make a run. I'm at Final Four, not national championship, but I think they could still make a run to the Final Four if you put TJ Power in the game. Hassan, me right now. TJ Power is gonna make Duke the team of the hour. Okay.
I love it, Darryl. Darryl,
you got it. You got to think though, man, that fake effort. There's a thing called fake effort in sports, right? So UNC was the first to every loose ball. They were throwing bodies around, diving, and Duke was giving fake effort, man. It was like our boys would be on top of a loose ball, and then 3 seconds later, you'd see a guy throw his body on top.
Absolutely.
That's got to be the adjustment, not TJ Power.
You hustle a little harder when you're the worst team.
Oh, yeah?
Absolutely.
What does that make you? I'm saying that lost to us twice, man. What does that make you?
Seriously, Tripowski needs to stop worrying about tripping people in the stands and on the court, and he needs to step up. And 23 points is cool, but some of those shots that he threw up late in that game, he was just looking for a foul. They need to come into the game, first of all, play TJ Power 15 to 20 minutes. That's going to be the adjustment to make. And Sean Stewart has also looked pretty good. Put him in the games for a little athleticism here and there, a little bit of length. John Shire's got to make some adjustments, though, man. Mark Mitchell cannot have 3 points and 3 fouls. You cannot have the same amount of fouls as you have points and almost rebounds.
Ryan
this
Young
is unacceptable for
Ryan
this late
Young
in the season.
played for 20 and had 0.
Yeah, put him on the bench. TJ Power, the man of the hour.
All right, guys. This rivalry is cooking. It's heated. It sounds to me that there's a lot of pressure on Duke. Beating a team twice in one season is a very good team twice in one season is a very hard thing to do. Beating them 3 times, a good team, is even harder. So is there anything, Will, Darryl, that each team can learn from the other moving forward in the thought that they could face each other in the ACC finals?
You take it away, Darryl. You do the honors.
I don't know what to say. I'm not gonna lie. I got distracted by Hassan's happy birthday balloons that popped up.
Yeah, the balloons got me too.
Yeah, Hassan. I'm not sure what you said, but it looked like you were celebrating something. Maybe you're celebrating a Carolina victory or something. I'm not sure. It should have popped up on Will's screen instead. But moving forward, man, I don't know what to say. Duke's just got to win. They got to win, and they got to beat Carolina. And if they can do that, I think they can make a run into the NCAA tournament.
Okay, Will, your thoughts?
We're better than Duke. That's what we learned, and I think
That a little Will, is that a little arrogance?
it is absolutely, absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely. We beat them in Cameron to win the outright ACC regular season title. We've got all the arrogance in the world
but
right now.
Don't you think like you have, you've basically just destroyed Duke? Do you think they're going to kowtow, or do you think they're going to come back harder? I think they're going to come back harder.
I want to see them come back harder. I think that if we play them again on Saturday, I think it's going to be the best of the three
they
games.
have pressure. They have the alumni. They had so many. I was at the Washington Duke. They had so many alumni there. Gene Banks, Kenny Denard. They had recruits in town.
Mm-hmm.
They had Cooper. What is his name? Cooper Cup or whatever is his name?
Cooper Flag.
Cooper Flag. Yeah, they had Cooper Flag was there. They had guys there for that game, and it just wasn't a good look. I mean, if you noticed, Coach K just looked angry. He looked like he just didn't look happy. He just looked like he was controlling himself because he knew he was on camera. I mean, do you really think Coach K is going to sit back and allow his team to get beat 3 times? Carolina fans, download Duke Carolina, the Blue Blood Rivalry film on iTunes or Apple TV or wherever you get your VOD downloads.
Hey, Queen, you know you my guy, right? I'm always putting for you. Tonight, when you step on the court, I step on the court too. And we in it.
So 2 games that night. It's the North Carolina game at Duke and the Duke game that's at North Carolina.
When we wake up on game day, there's a knot in my stomach. We've been up since 6 a.m. this morning watching recorded Duke Carolina games.
I watched the Rivers shot
about 15 times.
Yeah. Rivers on his own. Yes, at the buzzer.
We're here for the Duke game. And it is 10 hours and 9 minutes until game time.
The Blue Devils win 85-84.
Nothing better than North Carolina and Duke. It is the best rivalry in all of college basketball. Hall of Fame coaches, great players, and usually so much at stake.
And that's it. Carolina's won it. The fans have as much to do with the rivalry being great as the players and the coaches.
It's 5 hours before game time.
Well, there's no question that the rivalry is there every day in our community.
Can you imagine what it would be like around here if people didn't have it? It would be terrifying.
We are 30 minutes away from tip-off.
It's one of the most exciting events you can be a part of, and I still say it's not the biggest rivalry in college basketball. It's the biggest rivalry in all of sport, bar none.
It's game time!
I think
I'm glad you mentioned that. Can we talk about that real quick?
Yeah, talk about
They
it.
need to stop. They need to stop cutting to Coach K. You wouldn't know how he looked if they didn't put him on camera 24 times in the game. It's not allowing Shire to get out of that shadow. And we talked about this throughout the season, but at this point, I'm actually believing that might be an issue. This is now John Shire's team, and it should be that way. I think I saw Coach K on the camera more than I saw John Shire.
Is it Shire's team, though?
But Roy Williams was right behind the bench with Hubert like he is every game. What's the difference?
I think the difference right now, Hassan, is that Roy took a bit of a step back immediately after they finished, and now he's kind of finding his way back.
No, he didn't.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know that
didn't.
he was as present and as prevalent within on camera.
Roy
in the stadium,
runs
in the
into
arena.
the locker room before Carolina. If you go at any Carolina game, he sits right over where they come out. He has 4 steps down the staircase, and he's back in the locker room. If you look at his seat 2 minutes before the halftime ends, he is not in his seat. He's back in the locker room area. Roy Williams is as involved or more involved than Coach K. And Will, you have to say that you got to corroborate my story on Roy Williams.
You're not wrong that he is there.
He's there. He's in the locker room.
There's a difference between being there and pulling the strings. And the way this looks right now at Duke is that Shire is K's puppet.
Oh, cause stop.
Darryl, back me up.
Stop, Will, stop.
Listen,
you really
I
don't. They got different personalities. Coach K and Roy Williams have different personalities. Yeah. Roy Williams has that golly OG shucks, Dan Gummit personality that you think he's detached. I don't think he's detached. I don't think he's any more detached than Coach K. And I think they both picked their successor. They both planned their successor. And it is what it is. So do I think that Coach K is more involved than Roy Williams? The answer is no. I think they're equally involved.
To your point, Hassan, personality makes an incredible difference, and approach makes an incredible difference. You're saying Roy Williams is by golly. Well, Coach K is a drill sergeant, right? He's got the Army background. So he wants things to be run the way that he's run them the last 40 years. And it's very difficult for Mr. Drill Sergeant Major Payne to take a step back and not continue to tell his soldiers a 10 hunt. So it's a very different approach. And approach matters when you're dealing with 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old guys, and you're dealing with a coach who's still very young. Hubert Davis has how many years on John Shire? 20? 15 at least? It's very different.
Hubert Davis went to school with me. So he's in his 50s. I would say John Shire's in his 40s, late 30s.
I think he's mid to late 30s.
So I think that even that, the age, right, is a big thing. Maturity is a big thing.
He's 36.
He's my age.
36, dealing with a man that's twice his age. You know, it's very different.
And Hubert Davis is probably, I think he's 2 years older than me, so he's probably 54. So, that's a big difference.
I think the biggest difference between the two is that when Hubert was picked as his successor, I think that Roy just abruptly retiring and naming Hubert and then coming out and naming Hubert as the successor, everybody was on board with Hubert as the successor. He had been on the coaching staff. He had been doing most of the recruiting. He'd been bringing these guys in, where I get Shire had been doing recruiting as well, but most of Duke wasn't on board with Shire being brought in. They wanted Amaker, they wanted Hurley, they wanted somebody else.
I wouldn't say that. Here's what I would say. I would say some of Duke was not on board. I would say that the Iron Dukes, which is the important part of Duke basketball, wanted Shire. I would say most of the Duke people did not want what's his name? Guy at Pitt. What's the guy?
Capel?
Yeah, they didn't want Capel because they didn't want any of the NCAA allegations he had at Oklahoma. Yep. The real issue was Amaker, right? So Amaker, you bring him in, and I think he's older. I'm certain he's older than John Shire. And
he is.
How old is he?
He's got him by like 10 years, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's in his late 40s.
No, Tommy Amaker is 58 years old.
Oh, shit.
20 years. Even more.
20 years. Yeah, he's 58 years old. So you're bringing in a guy, maybe 14 years younger than Coach K, right? So if you were going to do a like for like, Hubert Davis and Amaker seems more like a like for like, right? You have a mature coach, a guy that's been around a long time. Tommy Amaker has won at Harvard. He's coming from Harvard University. And if you look at it from a resume perspective, Tommy Amaker should have been the guy, right? But when you're setting up a team, Duke probably wanted a guy that's going to be there for 25 years, 30 years, and it may have seemed like Shire was the better choice in terms of if we can get him going, get the program going, install a guy for 30 years, where Tommy Amaker might be a guy that you could as a 10-year hire. Maybe, right? Maybe a 10-year, maybe a 12-year.
I think for a lot of people, though, Hassan, that while you talk about the Iron Dukes and stuff, I think there may be even people on John Shire's bench right now as coaching staff who didn't necessarily agree with the move but wanted to have a job. And you're looking at John Shire might have been fifth best on a lot of people's list. You've named Amaker, you've named Capel, Wojciechowski, Hurley. These are all guys with extensive resumes. and John Shire, who had a very, very brief stint in the NBA, leaving because of an eye injury. This guy is, while he may be K's choice, Coach K, again, like we've talked about, shouldn't be as involved. So the people who are still involved don't necessarily agree with that decision. They didn't have him high on the list. And now I think you're seeing that. I think you're seeing the ramifications of that throughout the season, because John Shire had a pretty good year last year. He finished very well last season. This season hadn't been as great, but they're still 24-7. They were a top 10 team going into this game.
Yep.
Yet he's still getting a lot of criticism from even within his own coaching staff.
Darryl, from a resume perspective, for a player, what he did on the court, amateur, did on the court, coaching career, Tommy Amaker coached at Michigan, Harvard, Seton Hall. He was a Duke top. He was the top assistant at Duke. From a perspective of a coach and having a resume, I'm going to say Tommy Amaker was the leading candidate for the Duke job. And specifically because he was coming from Harvard, where he won championships, he won Ivy League championships, and he's coming from an institution that is academic, a similar or even better academic situation than Duke, right? So
absolutely,
you put it all together, and if you're just going by the resume, there's no question to me that Tommy Amaker was the guy. But if you want to make a 30-year hire as opposed to 10 or 12-year hire, then you can say, okay, John Shire's the guy. But if you wanted to, and if you wanted to do a like for like, and when I say a like for like, an apple for apple, you would have had a 58-year-old competing against a 54, 55-year-old in Hubert Davis, an established man that knows what he wants to do, has spent his whole life around the game. And there's a difference between being 50 and being 30. Would you agree with that, Will?
I would. But I think at the same time, though, if you look at like the Bill Guthridge era after Dean left, there's nothing wrong with the 15-year hire. There's nothing wrong with that gap, that bridge to get you through the next spot. And I think Amaker would have kept the Duke culture and the winning and this and that and the other alive, where I don't see Shire being the guy long term.
But here's the other thing. The reason why I don't think Amaker was highly considered was because Coach K wanted to mentor his next coach. He wanted to guide his next coach. And I think that Roy Williams has that relationship with Hubert Davis because he was on his bench. And I think they can have basketball conversations. Now, Amaker, as I mentioned, he went to Michigan. He went to Seton Hall. He went to Harvard, right? He has built his whole life away from Duke basketball. So for Coach K to come in 25 years later and say, Tommy, let's sit down and let's discuss strategy, he might not want that. And Coach K might have knew that if he brought Amaker in, he was bringing in a guy who was his own man, and probably didn't want Coach K hanging over his shoulder. And that could have been a major reason why that hire didn't happen, because Coach K wanted to mentor, Coach K wanted to be a part of the program, and Coach K wanted to guide someone who was younger through the process of being a great coach. What are your thoughts on that? And then my final question you guys can grab is, what do you think Coach K was thinking as the clock ran down on the Blue Devils? Will Darryl take any one of those?
Darryl, you got it, man.
Real quick, just because I'm speaking John Shire's favor real quick before we get off of that, let's not forget that he beat Hubert twice last year as well. So recency bias is a thing, but he is at this point, I believe, 2-2. Duke, as they watched the clock tick down, they probably felt defeated, but going into the ACC tournament, they can, like they did after the last Carolina loss, they can go ahead and string a couple games together before going into that championship game against UNC, and hopefully they find some confidence to be able to perform well this time around.
But don't you think Carolina had a fucking problem that year that he beat them twice? That's not fair.
Yeah, they had a fucking problem, but hell, nowadays everybody's got a fucking problem. And sometimes the problems are actually, fucking problems. And sometimes the problems are things that you just don't see. And I think right now we're talking about Duke's effing problem, and that's their coach and their former coach not being able to let go. And I just think that right now, John Shire's trying to establish himself, but it's difficult when you got a lot of people who didn't want you in that seat, and the guy that does want you in that seat, that people don't really want him around.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Caleb, let's talk about Caleb Love. I mean, I'm personally not giving John Shire any credit for those 2 wins because Caleb Love and RJ Davis had a problem. Okay. When he got those 2 wins, they were fighting each other, right? And then if you look at it, I think yesterday, 17 hours ago, Caleb Love was named Pac-12 Player of the Year. So this guy is a freaking baller. First team all Pac-12. He is a baller. So the idea that their girl problems between the 2 of them isn't the reason that Carolina went from a national championship contender that was 20 minutes away from winning a national championship where Armando twisted his ankle. What's the guy on the flank, Will? The guy from the
Brady
three-point
Manick.
shooter. What'd you say?
Brady Manick.
Brady Manick.
Yeah. Brady Manick got a concussion from winning a national championship. So I'm not giving Shire credit. I'm giving the conflict between Caleb Love and RJ credit for the demise of Carolina the year before. So Will, take those questions.
Yeah, I mean, we had a fucking problem, and last year was just a down year for us, man. We brought in Hubert's done really well, with the exception of last year, in bringing in guys from the transfer portal. I mean, if you look at this team, he part of the reason he won Coach of the Year, there were probably more deserving candidates, but he rebuilt an entire roster. So, I mean, you look at, we had 2 pieces from last year. You can't count Creighton Lebo. The guy's played 1 minute all season, 4 minutes all season, right?
I'm sorry, I was thinking about Pete Nance. That's on me. Last year, I was thinking about Pete Nance transferring in.
So that's where. So if you look at over a course of 3 years, and by the way, Shire's 2-3 against Carolina, not 2-2. You can't forget that Final Four game. Or no, that wasn't him. He is 2-2. Never mind.
Yeah.
He'll be 2-3 at the end of this year, whatever. If you look at the way over 3 years that he's done this, yeah, Pete Nance didn't work out, but there were much larger problems on that team last year. And the way he's rebuilt this team and everything, I mean, the guy's done well. And last year, call it what you want, they beat us twice. They beat Hubert twice, whatever. But
I feel like you guys are giving Hubert a fucking break. You're talking about a fucking problem. I feel like you guys are giving Hubert a break. As a coach of young men, if you guys have an issue, sure, some things are difficult to solve. But when you get on that court and it's the coach, you got to make sure that the players understand that we all have a common goal. Apparently, they had more than just a common goal off the court.
If you look at this team and how they play together, and I mean, I know you watch Carolina basketball. I'm watching Duke basketball. We're watching each other play so that we can talk shit on this podcast, right? So if you look at the way that this team plays together, you see how much of an issue. If you've got your 2 best players on your team or 2 of your 3 best players on your team won't even talk to each other, won't even pass each other the ball, it doesn't matter who your coach is. Could have been Roy, could have been Kay, could have been whoever. It doesn't matter who your coach is. This isn't this isn't the early 90s when you could slap a guy around, throw a chair at him, put him in a room in a closet together and let them fight it out. Everything's on social media now, so you can't. Problems are problems.
Let me tell you this.
Okay,
okay,
guys.
Problem. Yeah.
What was Coach K thinking when that clock was winding down? I have my thoughts, but I want to hear your thoughts. Darryl, go ahead.
He was thinking, man, I can't wait to coach these guys in the ACC tournament.
Will, what was he thinking?
Man, I made the wrong choice in Shire.
I think he was thinking, damn, I wish I could take this back. I could fix this. And he looked freaking livid.
Mad.
He
Mad.
looked mad. And I don't know what it looks like behind closed doors, but I know that he's doing something.
Coach K is like, hold on real quick, Hassan. Coach K is like the dad who's talking to his coworkers about how his son's so smart. He's going to be on the A honor roll this year. And he brings home that report card and he's just got a couple C's and D's in physical education and Spanish. He's like, come on, man. I just knew you were better than this. I've been hyping you up. And now here you are bringing home this. I got to tell my coworkers that you suck.
You know, I want to just segue back. Like, I do think there's a place for Roy, and I do think there's a place for Coach K in college basketball. Yeah. You know, when we talked about recruiting, we talked about restructuring teams. Like I said in previous podcasts, like, I believe that there's a role for a general manager. I think as college basketball becomes more professionalized, as players are getting paid, as players can leave and go, it's going to be important for there to be a guy behind the scenes managing the coach and bringing in the players. So I think like a Roy Williams, and I think a Coach K, I think they can do a GM job indefinitely, right? Because as long as their minds are working really well, they watch the game, they can say, okay, well, we're going to target this guy over at Cal Berkeley. We're going to target this guy at Oklahoma because I've been watching him all season, and and his grades are good, and we're going to bring him to Duke University. And then I think if you make Coach K the GM, which he already is, you make Roy the GM, which he already is. Now, when the GM shows up to practice, you know there's a fucking problem, right? And everybody has a problem. The players have a problem. The coach has a problem, just like in basketball. You know, I worked for the Lakers, and Jerry West would keep a very distance from the locker room. But if Jerry West showed up in that locker room, there were problems where you knew that the guys were going to get shipped, guys were leaving, we had to win. So, you know, as much as we laugh about Coach K, Roy Williams sitting on the sideline, I do think there's a role, and I just want to know what you guys think.
I think Roy specifically, because I know Carolina sports. I don't really know Duke as well as I know Carolina. But I think Roy specifically is just fine with being kind of the face and the figurehead. They show him at games a couple times. He likes to go into the locker room, whatever. And I'm going to make a football reference here, and I'm not a Cowboys fan, but if you listen to Schultz and Ferguson, the two tight ends for the Texans and the Cowboys, talk about how much of a clown show and a circus the Dallas Cowboy facility is. With people coming in and out and tours while they're working out and this and that and the other, there's always people around, and it's a historical franchise. Like, as much as we all want to crap on the Cowboys, the people love them. And Carolina and Duke are both historical franchises. So it's even more than Roy in the locker room. You've got all these former players, you've got fans, you've got families of, name somebody, a booster, a donor,
David Robinson,
all in and out all the time.
David Robinson there. You've got Michael Strahan. You've got all these different folks who are there.
Yep. So you've got in Carolina kind of operates the same way at practices. I've been to practices before, and there were a bunch of kids running around in the concourse and yada yada yada. Like, it happens. And with these historic franchises, we talk about family and brotherhood with Carolina and Duke. Those people are going to be around. I just don't know. I love the GM idea. I think it's fantastic. I just don't know if Roy would make the best GM from a Carolina standpoint. I don't think I don't know if K would either. I mean, I think Duke relies too heavily on.
Here's the reason why I think a GM works, right?
Yeah.
The reason in college basketball, in professional basketball, the NBA recycles coaches, right? Is because when a coach, and this is in any sport, when a coach has been in a situation for a long time, he gets committed to his guys and what was working for him, even when it doesn't work, right? So when you have a coach that's coaching in the NBA and he gets used to the lineup he's playing with, nothing he can do can unsee what he sees. But a GM who's away from the team, who doesn't have relationships with the players, doesn't see them in practice every day, he can make a decision on players, the coach, and say, okay, the coach has been here too long. We need a guy who's a good coach with a fresh look on this team so that he can reevaluate my roster. Okay. So I do think there's a role for a GM. I do think that the coach should work for the GM. So the GM and the coach should be in sync about what they want to do. And I think these would be perfect roles for both Roy and Coach K. It would keep them involved in the game. They could continually recruit, and there would not be a conflict of interest if their interest is part of making the organization successful. Darryl, your thoughts on that?
Hassan, I love the GM idea. You know, when you presented that, I really do like that idea. I hate the idea of Coach K being the GM at Duke. Because for me, it's very similar to, and again, a football reference, Jerry Jones. They want to run it the way they want to run it. And there's nothing wrong with a GM and a coach being in sync. But when the GM now dictates and wants it to be run only the way that he wants to be run, I don't think that Coach K has much bend. There's not much flexibility. Coach K wants the system run the way that he wants it run. And I don't think that is beneficial for a coach, because then at that point, it's like Will was talking about earlier, you're Geppetto. And at that point, you're starting to pull strings. You're just a puppet. I really do like the GM idea. I think the GM and the coach should be in sync. But I don't think that you should have a dictatorship, which I think is what Coach K would be as the GM of Duke University basketball. I believe that in that case, I hate it. I think Roy would probably be a little bit more lenient, a little more laid back, still doing the things that he wants to do, but also understanding that there is a coach and being more open to ideas. Coach K, to me, is very straight, very straight. He's not going to have much flexibility.
Well, if you look at with Roy, I'm not sure we're talking about him like he would just automatically be the GM. And I think that he left coaching for the same reason that Nick Saban left coaching, for the same reason that who's the guy at UCLA, Chip Kelly, stopped being a head coach to go be an offensive coordinator somewhere, is that the transfer portals changed things. And these guys, the game's not the same as it used to be. And if you look at Duke with the number one recruiting class this year, next year, so on and so forth, number one recruits don't translate to championships like they used to. They don't translate to wins like they used to. And I think these guys, not only do you have to recruit high school kids, but you've got to recruit college kids now too. And I just think that Roy's fine with being, and I can't speak for Coach K, obviously, but it does look like he's a little bit more involved. But Roy's just fine with showing up, saying hi, telling him he's proud of him, whatever, doing the whole thing, and then just kind of letting it carry on.
Well, here's what I see. The game has changed. The coaches are so focused game planning for games every 3-4 days, right? Is that correct? Every 3 to 4 days they have a game. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so what I think the role of the GM would be is not to be exactly focused on Duke basketball or Carolina basketball, but be focused on the transfer portal. So my job would be to study, what are we missing? Okay, we're missing an inside presence that's going to pound the boards, get buckets by the court. If we keep Filipowski next year, or if Filipowski goes, who do we get to replace him? And if Mark Mitchell stays, who's going to be that guy that gets on the low block, right? Who we're going to put, what grown man we're going to get on the low block, right? And who's going to pound and be a presence. Now, can I get that out of the high school? Maybe, maybe not. But can I get that from Oklahoma? Can I get that from Indiana? Can I get that player from Cal Berkeley? Maybe, right? So I'm thinking the GM's role is to study not only his teams, but plan his team for next year. Plan his team for the current year and construct his roster based on his weaknesses and strengths, right? And who's leaving and who he thinks is going and who he thinks is going and who he thinks is going to get in that transfer portal, right?
Yeah.
I don't think a coach and the coaching staff have enough time to do all that research and bring in players. And now a Coach K can be part of the recruiting process, and he can study all the high school recruits and say, hey, this is our block. These are our 6 guys that are coming in for the 2025 class. These are our transfer targets. And I think if went to that model, there's a place for Coach K in the game. There's a place for John Shire in the game. There is a place for Roy and Hubert if they wanted to work together. And maybe there's a place for Elton Brand in college basketball because he's been a GM at the 76ers. Maybe there's a place for him too.
I think the idea is incredible. I just don't imagine Coach K being able to step aside and do only the things that you just named. I think he's Coach K for a reason. Now, what I will present to you is I could see John Shire actually being an incredible GM, a much better GM than he is a coach.
Better GM as well.
He knows the game of basketball. He doesn't necessarily have to lead the guys and allow somebody else to do that. Then you do bring in maybe one of the other guys you mentioned, like a Tommy Amaker, and they work together. But John Shire probably has an incredible basketball mind. He can assess it from a distance, but I don't know that he's a hands-on type of individual. That very similar to Brad Stevens leaving his role as a coach and moving up into the front office. I could see John Shire discontinuing his role as well as the head coach of Duke University and moving up into the office as this proposed GM.
Shire's shown he can recruit, right? Like he is from a GM standpoint, he's done everything that you'd want him to do. The coaching, I mean, yeah, you guys beat us twice last year, yada yada yada, but the coaching may end up being his problem. I do think that the G League, right? The NBA G League isn't working. It worked years ago because the NIL wasn't in place and guys could skip college, go to the G League, make money, and then get drafted or sign a 2-way deal or whatever, right? The NBA already came out and said it's not working. So as that kind of dissipates and goes away, I think you're going to see NCAA basketball, college basketball as we know it, turn into more of an amateur setup where you've got a president of basketball operations, which Coach K could be. You go out there, you be the face, you shake hands, you sign autographs, you go to games, you sit behind the bench, you do this, that, and the other. You're there, you're present. And then if you have a Shire as the GM or somebody like that, I think it's going to be more of an NBA type of structure.
So you agree with me? And with the NIL,
absolutely. Yeah, I think the GM role
with
thing
the
is great.
NIL, you could put the NBA G League out of business because a top recruit jumping for $50,000-$60,000 when he can make $1 million is stupid.
Yep.
Right? It's simple economics, right?
Yep.
And then you can build that brand. And like we discuss, a guy makes a commitment. He signs a contract. So if he thinks he can jump to the NBA year one, he signs a 1-year deal for X number of dollars. If he thinks he wants to lock in his millions for 2, he locks in. And then at the end of that contract, you guys can say, okay, well, we can redo this contract. You're not quite ready for the NBA, but we're not going to give you what we gave you last year. You're going to have to take less to do this. And that's too much for a coach. That requires a general manager to manage. And the NCAA with the NIL has an opportunity to put the G League out of business. And they have an opportunity to keep guys there for 4 years, like Armando Bacot, 5 years at Carolina. I think he arrived in 2019, right? And that's great for the sport. That's great for basketball. That's great for alumni. That's great for everybody to see these teams and build these teams into powerhouses. But this has been episode 16. It's been another fantastic show. I can't wait to guys to do this ACC show.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
That's going to be fun. I mean, we can
Can't
have
wait to talk about how Duke won the ACC tournament. You're right.
Right. I mean, that could happen, right? And you guys, thank you for rocking with us for this past hour. If you like the podcast, share it. And like I said, if you like the podcast, share it. If you want to donate to the podcast, go to bluebloodrivalry.com. And thank you for being a part of this season of our podcast. And if you ran in our 5K, thank you for running in our 5K. And as we always say, we out.
We out.
Yeah.
The Blue Blood TV podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, guys, these shows grow when you share them. So we have a great show here. Share them with all your friends. Make them aware of the Blue Blood TV podcast.
Beats in my Panama. I'ma still I buy leads with the data. She bought a 17 just to fly back. Just to fly back. Come on, catch for me. Come on, father. Girl, I say I'm too smooth. Must a Cadillac. Must a Cadillac. Must a Cadillac. Purple jeans on. Girl, yeah, the Benz I'm leaving, John. When I fuck police, I don't know what we want.